The following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
In Fort Pierce, from Stewart.
We are on the air.
I know. But
okay.
We're talking old people stuff.
We don't stop mid-sentence.
We started mid-sentence. That's the problem.
You know, Dan, you remember the day when we were 16, 26, 36, and we'd say, look at these old people. All they do is talk about their ailments and diseases and getting a stroke. All of a sudden, it's us.
I try not to.
I know you try not to, but it's pretty hard it's pretty hard when your peer group is as old as you are.
I know. They all have stuff, and you want to be sort of, empathetic and telling them all the new stuff that you know for your
there are
problems.
folks that spend, 2, 3, 4 days a week visiting some sort of doctor.
Is that why they call it the golden years? Because you give your gold to somebody
to
else?
The doctors.
Yeah, that must be it. I always call them the rusty years.
But I think if they didn't have good coverage, they wouldn't be in all those offices. They'd consolidate a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Dan.
I had to help my father do that. I mean, they had his doctors, they were passing him around like crazy.
Oh, they do like crazy.
Every single week he had appointments. And I'm like, are you sick? I asked him, plain out, are you sick? What's going on? Well, no, they want me. And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm getting involved. Yeah. And once I got involved, he was on an every 6 months, once a year schedule.
Yeah.
Well, the key is this. What Medicare will pay for, doctors are going to do the tests. I mean, test and more tests and more tests.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, you can empathize with this. I got a buddy going in today for a new hip.
Well, I'm trying not to empathize with it because I'm doing so much better since I had those little cortisone shots. And, like Doc said, hey, if it works, then you're good
Did they determine it was your hip?
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? It's from football. It's from being tackled. It's from automobile accidents and all the times when I went in to see the doctor.
Well, that's what I just said about my neck.
And they told me, hey, you're going to get arthritis from this probably, Dan, up the road because your bone's sticking out of your leg and it's not supposed to be exposed to the air.
Yeah,
and so all those prophecies are coming true. I'm starting to get a few little bits of arthritis.
I got another buddy of mine, same thing. He goes to the doctor. He had this flu that's been going around, and you cough and you cough and you cough and it hangs on and hangs on. He goes in there, and they said, there's nothing wrong with you, except your back is full of arthritis. Well, he football player in college, same old thing.
But that's not why he went to the doctor.
No, but that's all they could find was what he already knew
And
about.
I bet you they put him on a treatment plan.
Well, he's already been.
Oh, okay.
And he continues on. One of the perks of getting old, most people have a, quote, regimen of drugs. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm going to tell you what my doctor told me. He goes, listen, Dan, as you get older, you're going to have to worry about two major things. He goes, one is technology. He goes, and I can't help you with that. He goes, the other thing is you're going to have to try to not get stiffened up. You got to stay limber all that you can. He goes, we might be able to give you some stretches and things to help you.
Yeah,
and you know what? I believe that. I truly believe that.
I'm still hurting from exercising on the boat underneath the engine.
Absolutely.
That sounds more like work.
I got to tell you something. Your mind, this is a male thing. We never get past 14 technically. We still think we can always do. It's no wonder you read about guys falling off the roof on a ladder doing because their mind says 14, their body says we don't care what you think. We're going to get even.
The moving stuff. I was over at my shop. There's a little transmission from an old van that we'd worked on, and I go, I'm just going to go ahead and move this. No, it was a lot heavier than I remembered.
Exactly.
So I go, hey, you know what? I'm not going to move that, boys. You'll have to move it yourself.
340-1590, 340-1590. This is the Dan and Joe Show, also called the Team Martek Hour, but under normal circumstances, it's the Dan and Joe Show. And just for those of you that have not listened, starting around 2004, Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, and Joe Martek, financial advisor, started doing radio shows with the very simple concept people would come to me. I've got lots of clients here and in 13 other states because that happens. And they'd ask me questions that I don't know the answer to. So in my not too humble opinion, if you are a credible professional, you align yourself with other credible professionals in order to help your client. Now, when I use the word align, that doesn't mean we don't. What it does mean is we do not share commissions, we do not share fees, we don't share office space, we don't own one another. Each one, when I wanted to start putting these radio shows together, was to try and find what I considered people that were top in their field that did not want to be a part of an organization or owned by somebody. And you got to admit, Dan, we've been pretty lucky over the years doing that.
We have, Joe. And what's nice is, it's a call-in show. People that have questions call in. If we know the answer, we'll tell it to them on the air. If not, we'll get the answer for them. And what I've found over these many years is if somebody has a question, I bet you there's 100 people with the same question.
Exactly.
They don't call in and ask. So over the years, I think we've been able to help an awful lot of people, Joe.
And we go on with it. The other members of the group, Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, and then Mike Polish, mortgage broker. And these two were the most recent. They're 5 or 7 years now. I don't know how long. But anyway, the concept for adding them, the reason for adding them was when all of a sudden this last recession hit and the debacle of real estate became monstrous. Mortgage money became at least more difficult than it was at the height of the debacle. And our job, again, was to educate people on what they could do and how they could do it. And we've been very, very blessed to be able to do that.
And when we see things, Joe, within our industries that either are very good for the consumer or in some cases we feel are not good for the consumer, we try to educate them and encourage them to get involved politically sometimes.
Yeah.
I've been on this kick about the uninsured drivers causing you to have PIP issues. If you have let's say I smash into the back of you and it's not your fault and you end up going to be checked and then it happens again, once again, not your fault. Many insurance companies are canceling you or raising your rates through the roof. I don't believe that if it's not your fault, you should be charged with it.
Yeah,
I had something else that just happened. Client was rear-ended, causing him to hit the car in front of him.
Of course.
They charged him for an accident.
See, no, that first guy.
That shouldn't be right.
First guy
That shouldn't be like
be.
that.
Yeah.
But it also depends how the police write it up, isn't it?
I don't care how they write it up.
I know.
Be.
That sounds like a battle among insurance companies then. That guy in the middle, his insurance company's going to go, hey, wait a minute, don't you think?
Well, they're going to,
It affected his rate, bottom line.
Yeah.
And it's just not right. And I see these things, not all the time, but things within the industry that just, they may be legal, but I think they're immoral. They shouldn't be allowed to happen,
Okay, I got a test.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Sure.
You've been doing
You're
these
testing me?
Yep. Well, you and Dan.
Okay.
I won't use Cliff because he's kind of slow. But
He'll get the answer.
He'll get the answer.
He sits over there and listens.
So here's a circumstance that happened this week. Young man, 39 years old, leaving an employer, and he's got a IRA with them, which was a SEP. Now that's just a category, which they're all the same rules. You put money in, and you don't pay tax on it, and
it's deferred.
It's deferred, and when you take it out later on,
when you're 59 and a half.
It reoccurs.
There's the tax. Yeah, tax man shows
You're not
up.
supposed to take it out until you're 59 and a half, because if you do, there's a 10% penalty plus the tax. But after 59 and a half, you can start taking money out, and there's only tax, no penalty. Now, his thing was, he says, okay, I've got $25,000. I want to roll it into a Roth IRA.
Okay.
And I said, why do you want to do that? I said, do you understand the difference?
Because he can take it out.
Well, okay, now here comes.
Wouldn't he have to pay the tax on the growth?
Here's what happens. All of that $25,000 has never been taxed.
So it's going to become taxed.
If he rolls that into a Roth IRA,
Okay.
Now you know what the Roth IRA is after all these years?
I think so.
Go ahead. Here's part of the test.
Uh-oh.
Come on.
I think a Roth IRA, you can take the money out before you're 59 and a half.
No.
Well, on both. Here's my understanding, Joseph. On the Roth, you pay the tax going in.
Right.
Okay.
So the money and the growth are tax-free, not tax-deferred.
Okay.
Tax-free.
Tax-free is like when your mom says, "Hey, I'm not going to beat you," but when your dad gets home, he's going to beat you. That's the
That's
deferred.
deferred.
That's
That's
the deferred beating.
I remember those days.
Yes.
Well, here's the key to it. So I said to the guy, I said, okay, why do you want to do that? He says, well, I look forward to the idea of tax. He actually knew the circumstance. And I'm thinking, I'm worried that he didn't.
Does he feel as though he's in a lower tax bracket now than he may be down the road?
Well, he's looking, well, and we started talking about just exactly what you just said.
Has the value of his IRA gone down, which means the growth won't be so great? Maybe now's a good time to do that roll.
The concept was very simple. I got 25 grand. I left that employer. I want to roll that into a Roth. I said, you're going to probably pay $5,000 in tax thereabout in order to make the move.
But
And
he would eventually pay that anyway.
Well, yes and no. Here comes the magic question. Now, think about this logically. I've got this $25,000, and I'm 39 years old. And I wait until I'm 65, let's say, to start taking the money out, or 70, pick any number. But I'm not working anymore. Mm-hmm. So let's say I was making $75,000 a year working, and now I'm retired and I'm making $25,000 or $30,000 a year retired.
But what if that $25,000 today is worth $75,000? When you're 70, you got to pay a tax on the whole 75.
Well, then you have to pay a tax on everything,
Yes.
Well, and what happens
even your
is,
Social Security.
okay, here comes
Or a
back
portion
to,
of it.
back to the test now. The rules are, and you did the 59 and a half, if you take out money prior to age 59 and a half, you pay penalty and tax. Even on a Roth, they don't want you taking it out before 59 and a half. You
That's
pay
correct.
a penalty, but no tax.
Okay.
On the other hand, when you turn 70 and one half, you have to start taking money out of a traditional IRA or any type of retirement plan except a Roth.
It's a minimum required distribution.
It just feels like they're getting you coming
Well,
They
or,
want your
or
tax
going.
before you die.
Well, here,
Coming or going.
It's not that it's a big deal. When you turn 70 and a half, you got to take out roughly 4% of the value of the account.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's take this same guy.
Let's say it's $100,000 to make your math easy, Joe.
And that's what I was going with. He puts the 25 in, and now he's 60, and it's worth 100. He can take the whole 100, spend it on whatever he wants, and there's no tax. And that's where he's going with his head. If I contribute plus my 20 minus the 5 in tax, and I contribute my $5,000 a year, and when I start turning 60 or 70, whatever, pick a number, I might have $200,000 tax-free.
Free.
Okay, so he only paid $5,000 ever on whatever that money might become.
Yes.
He pays it now.
He
Okay.
pays it now. So what happens is with a Roth, the rule is this: whatever you put into it, you have paid tax on.
I say get it in cash. Let's go shopping.
That's it, and that's where he's at. That's what his wife said. Give me the money, trust
Get it
me.
in cash.
Now,
Let's
I have seen people that do this, Joseph. They'll take their existing IRA
Yeah.
and they'll leave it lay,
Right?
and they'll start a Roth.
Yeah.
So you can have both.
Yes.
It's not like you have to have one or the other. You can
That's
have
right.
both.
And you actually can contribute to both. You can have a Roth IRA and a traditional. You're limited to how much money you can put in each year. And if you have a 401k with an employer, you may not be able to do any.
If he was planning on adding to it, then
Yeah.
wouldn't he be better off putting it into a traditional IRA and then just create the Roth?
Well, here comes the question. And here, nobody
'Cause
knows the
then
answer.
there's no
Well,
$5,000 needed.
Well, if you take that $5,000 this year, let's say he's making 75, and he's going to pay tax on that 5,000. If he put it into a traditional IRA, he wouldn't pay tax on that money now. Would that lower his tax bracket?
Possibly. Who knows?
Possibly, but not much. So let's
We
say
have
Because he would-
accountants who would
now-
know.
Oh, well, we have accountants who would know.
when he starts to take it, he's only going to pay tax on what he
Takes
earned.
No, on a Roth IRA, there's no tax on
No,
any
on
of
a
it.
traditional.
On a traditional, every dime you pay tax.
Okay.
Because
Every-
every dime you put in was tax deferred.
You didn't pay
Okay.
tax on
With
any
the
of it.
Roth, you paid the tax up front.
And that was tax deferred as it grew
And
into the
growth
initial
is, and
25.
the growth is tax free.
Tax. So all the money you put in a Roth, you pay tax on. Any
So what was your
growth-
advice?
I said, my advice is no advice.
Okay.
He knew what he wants to do. And I said, fine. I just want to make sure that you, Mr. customer, Mr. Client, knows exactly what you're doing and what your goal is. And hey, I love the concept. I mean, Dan, let's face it. If you and I would have had such a thing when we were 25 or 30 years old.
That's what I would have done. You know what I would have told him? I would have said, the $25,000 hit you're going to take,
right?
Isn't that great?
No, that's
I'd take the hit up front. I'd roll it all into the Roth.
That's what he's doing.
And I would put every future contribution into
that
the
Roth. Yeah.
And that's what he's doing.
That's what I would have told him.
Exactly
If
what
he had hundreds of thousands in the traditional IRA, I'd probably say leave that lay and put all your future contributions into Roth. That's my personal advice.
Or let's take hundreds of thousands in a traditional and take 10,000 out or 20,000 and roll it into the Roth. And you don't have to do it all this year. You could roll 10,000 this year, 5,000 this year, 5,000 next year.
And pay as you go.
Pay as you go.
Tax as
You can play the tax game with your accountant. How much can I afford to take without changing my tax bracket?
Yeah.
You know, there's all kinds of things that need to be looked at. So when we're going with Dan, I mean, I've had people, and Dan, you've seen them too, all of a sudden they've got $1 million in an IRA.
Yeah.
Because they got to roll out of their company plan into an individual retirement account and when they left the employer.
Yeah.
And now they have to start taking that money out and every year when they turn 70 if they're not dead. And it's not a big
I
deal.
know it sounds a little flippant, but it's a good problem to have. If you got if I got $1 million in the IRA,
what a deal.
You know, I got to pay my taxes. You'd have had to pay them anyway. Be grateful you got the $1 million.
Hey, I'm telling you, you know, and people.
Wait, you can afford your taxes.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly. Yeah,
Hey, I got something here, Joseph. I don't want you to read the second page until you read the first page.
So read the first page out loud?
Yeah, read the first page out loud and then...
Not the fine print on top?
No.
The subject.
The subject.
Interesting tidbit. By the way, anybody that's got any observations or questions on IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, Roth IRAs, 457s.
You think they all know what those things mean? Those are jargon terms.
All these are...
Got money?
Got money. Put it that way.
If you've got money in a retirement account of any type and you have any questions, this is a good place to call.
How about shoebox under my bed?
Shoebox under your bed
That
works
works.
real
Bring that
good.
into.
Works real good until somebody breaks in and takes your shoebox.
That's true.
340-1590, 340-1590. Remember, you got Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, and Dan's also multi-licensed on all kinds of stuff, not just car, home, and business. He also was securities licensed at one time, and Dan's a pretty sophisticated investor, so he's a good person to bounce things off on. Anyway, subject. This is Dan handed me this. Interesting tidbit. The president-elect won the election with less than 40% of the popular vote, but had the majority of electoral votes. Now, that 40% meant he didn't take California and New York.
That's right.
Okay.
Keep reading.
Everything else, yeah. Okay, anyway. The Republican Party had put forth a candidate to win several crucial states that could swing the Electoral College. The election was a bitter one, with the Democratic Party fractured between two candidates. The incoming president received so many death threats that he chose to arrive in Washington in secrecy. Security for the inauguration was the tightest ever, with troops stationed on buildings throughout the day. I know where this is going. This was an unprecedented amount of protection for any president-elect. Many members of Congress chose not to attend the ceremony. Despite all this, Abraham Lincoln was sworn in as our 16th president on March 4th, 1861.
So you think history is repeating itself, Joe?
It's the 1800 too. When it was it Jefferson? Yeah,
Jefferson
it was
was
Jefferson in 1800.
1860.
That was a
yeah.
bad.
That was bad too. That was really bad.
It was a very interesting
I mean,
thing. 'Cause
multiple states were
I
seceding and things like that.
I read these John Jakes books about basically the Civil War and this whole period of time, and a good portion of that was devoted to Lincoln. And boy, was he one hated guy. Woo-wee!
People don't. But look what accomplished out of all that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, the initial reason for the split between North and South was states' rights as far as wanting to send product to England, and then the federal government wanted to put a huge tariff on it when it came back, and they said, well, you can't do that. We're out of here. And it all started where the Fed said, hey, we have the power. We did fight a war over that, and the Fed has the power. And now we have states who are saying, we don't care what the federal law is. We're going to do our own thing. Oh, by the way, we still want money.
Yeah. You know, it's America is
Which
an,
is
an
like the
anomaly
weird.
in the whole world that we were able to put together 50 states under one umbrella.
And let's face it, Joe, some of our states are as big as countries.
Yeah, yeah.
Texas.
Oh, they're
California.
Yeah, Texas has an economy equal to many nations.
Yes.
Better than many
California
nations.
by itself, they say, would be the 5th most
Biggest
wealthy
economy,
nation
yeah.
on earth, all by itself. Well, you know, and we are, look at how
But I thought they're bankrupt.
well, here's what
I
they've
got
done.
the money
that's the
troubles.
cities.
What they have done
Okay.
Well,
is,
look at our country, okay? The government has made more money, taking in more money, tax revenue than it ever has. Yet we're umpteen trillion, 20 trillion and
20
growing.
trillion in
Right.
debt.
How does that make sense? Well, it's easy. If you spend more than you make, I don't care if you're
How you do it.
Yeah.
if you're me,
No.
a little individual, or the government, you cannot do that.
Well, you can, but it's hard to find a
You-
bank that'll
you and
keep,
I can't do
no,
that.
we can't find a
print
bank
our
that'll
own.
keep
Keep
giving
the
us.
If we
supply
print our
coming.
own money, we go to jail for counterfeiting.
Our government can print its own money, which is us, by the way. Our government is us. Remember?
No, it's really not us. We just fund it.
We just fund it. Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. Which
Or
brings
they just take it.
which brings me up to the million, billion, trillion story again. The timing
It's a good story.
is pretty
Yeah, it's apropos. Joe.
pretty good for that. Most of us, when we hear million, billion, trillion, we don't pay too much attention because our checkbooks are missing a few of those zeros. Now, this is trivia, but it's also perspective, and that is a million seconds, tick, 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 is 12 days. A billion seconds is 32 years. That simply means if you sat in front of a fireplace and you threw a dollar bill every second into that fireplace, you'd have to sit there for 32 years to use $1 billion up. However, a trillion seconds is 32,000 years.
You better line up some family members to help keep you.
Long ways, you know. I
Toss
don't.
that
Well, that's
money
why
away.
a dollar today doesn't go very far.
You know why?
Because they're burning them up
but
so fast.
It seems like everything you buy is $100. You go into Publix, $100. You go fill up your tank if you've got a truck, it's $100. You go anywhere, you
Hey,
know.
listen, you
I
got,
mean,
you got $100 on you, girl?
no, I don't.
it's in the it's in the gas tank.
Gas tank.
Yeah, when you drive those big trucks, they
Yeah.
can suck up
Yeah.
$100. That's a pretty good one. Hey, in fact, it looks like they're saying the price of gas is going to start doing a little more escalating.
Well, because summer's coming and people are going to travel.
I paid over $3
Well,
bucks
duh.
a gallon for high test this week.
yeah, it's starting to go up again.
So it's,
oh, hey, that's the way it works.
Anybody who thought that the barrel was going to stay at 50 and below,
Yep.
and we told them this, that, oil futures,
Yep.
in my opinion, when we were talking about
Yep,
it, Joe,
yep.
was a consideration to make because it's not going to stay like that.
Well, you got a couple major things happening with oil. One are the Arabs, which is always volatile. The second one is fracking. Now, you know, I was talking to somebody yesterday had never heard of fracking. I thought everybody in the world had heard of fracking, like damn things we take for
course.
granted again.
But now there's a lot of people who are really anti-fracking.
Well,
What?
sure, they think we're going to split the earth open. We're going to frack it so much.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually against fracking because I own oil stocks and I want them to go up. But what happened is there are many, many states that are instituting legislation to stop fracking in their states, including Florida. Not that we have many oil wells.
Now, does this pipeline situation, the change that Trump has made, does that affect the fracking?
No, not a
Because
bit.
now we're just going
Not
to
a
be
bit. Not a bit.
It
In
just-
fact,
shipping that oil through that pipeline.
Well, it's just like people that have natural gas. Now, let's say you have natural gas at your house. Do you have a pipeline? Yes, you do.
Got to.
Or have you? If you're against, the big, oil pipeline, you can go outside and turn your gas off.
yeah.
Okay, but you don't do that. You're only aware of what you think you've been told. Okay, we've talked about this before, Joe. Natural gas should be the alternative fuel instead of batteries and solar till we perfect them. We talked about this for almost
Yeah, because
a
where
year.
are we going with these spent batteries? Seriously, where are we going to go with all of those?
Well, I love
They
this.
don't want to put them in the landfill. They don't want, you have to be very careful. You change a battery in your car, you have to pay a charge to get rid of it.
You know that if you go from traditional petroleum burning engine to a natural gas engine, the cost is ungodly high. But it shouldn't be, because it's not that hard of a technology.
But they don't want you to have that yet.
Well, I understand that,
yeah.
but that's why we say we propose what we think is best for the consumer.
Absolutely.
Which is natural gas, until we can find a better way. Batteries and solar, not going to cut it for driving my car.
You know, it's an interesting thing about there are many trucking companies now.
Absolutely.
In fact, I think Waste Management and a couple of other of the big.
I was told that a lot of the Flying J have that for
they're
the trucks
supposed
to be
have
filled up.
Natural gas pumping thing. And the trucks make perfect sense, because the way the EPA had it set up was, if you had to get a permit to convert to natural gas, and if you got a permit to convert your trucks, that was okay if every truck was the same year,
so
same engine,
if you
same
had a
everything.
fleet of the same vehicles,
You had to have
you were
exactly
good.
the same one, and you'd get. But if you had 10 different models, you'd have to have 10 different permits, and the cost was astronomical.
And it made no sense.
No sense.
Well, what it reeks of to me is collusion
Yeah.
between the people who don't want you to use
Yeah,
natural
absolutely.
gas until they own the natural gas facility.
Hey, I heard a real interesting one yesterday. This guy that's on Shark Tank. I keep saying it's O'Reilly, but I think it's O'Leary. You know what I'm
Yeah, I
talking about?
only know Mark Cuban, and I really don't
O'Leary,
like him.
he's a constant guest on CNBC, and he's got a couple of mutual funds that he's started, and he's obviously multi-billionaire or millionaire, and he's making all kinds of money. And they were talking about Tesla,
Okay.
where Tesla now is an automobile company. Their value, technically because of their stock value, is more than that of General Motors
Yeah,
and
they
or
just
Ford.
it made news earlier this week. I think it was
big
yesterday
news.
or Friday.
And here's a
I'm not
company
sure.
that's, a little company in comparison, but all of a sudden their stock prices are anyway. And they asked him what he thought about that, and he said, "I have a bit of a problem with that." And they said, "What's that?" He says, "I'm worried about my package." And they said, "What?" He says, "I'm sitting on top of what could be the biggest bomb in the whole world, called a lithium battery that's underneath that whole car. I'm a bit worried about my package." It was so funny. CNBC changed the subject pretty quickly. But it was so funny when you hear about phones blowing up
Yeah.
and computers blowing up.
Well, Tesla, Joe, is such an interesting character. I encourage anybody listening, if they haven't read up on him, he was so ahead of his time.
Oh, boy.
His goal was to provide free electricity to you and I.
You mean the original, like
the original
guy,
Tesla.
right?
Okay, not the
Nikola
Tesla.
Tesla.
Yeah,
Nikola
not the
Tesla.
company, right.
It's an amazing story.
Yes.
But he's the guy, Elon Musk, who's doing this. He is also a genius because he's been able to pull this off, and he's also doing the space thing.
See, now they say Marconi invented radio, but it really was Tesla.
Yeah. I mean, he
It was Tesla.
You're going back a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
and
that's very
wireless
good,
and
very
many
good.
things that he envisioned for us to have. One of the things I've talked about before is I believe that as God enlightens a man's mind or a woman's mind to understand some principle, I believe he does that.
You were just politically correct
for-
there. Did you realize
Yes,
that?
for the
Yeah,
good.
but he didn't mean it.
For the good of his creation.
You mean mankind?
Yes. Now, here's what happens.
Not womankind.
Here's what happens. The inventor,
Way to go, girl.
he figures out a way to get rich off of it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the intent of
Yeah.
the knowledge.
Yeah.
The intent
Yeah.
was, this is what I want you to have, go and spread it. And then what happens is, as the guy's on his deathbed or close, he goes, "Oh, I shouldn't have used all this money for myself. I better build that hospital and this wing and that wing and get right." It's amazing what these people do toward the end of their lives. But I think this knowledge is intended for your good, Joe,
Of
and
course,
for mine.
of course. Maybe not so much for you and me, but look at just subsequent generations and technology, what it's doing. It's absolutely amazing what we take for granted
Even
today.
old technology.
I believe that there was wireless electricity a long, long time ago. There's just no proof that we had it.
'Cause there was no
and
wire.
I don't mean we. Yeah, there's no wire.
There's no wire.
But I think that mankind accomplished this a long, long time ago.
Yeah, don't think
where
that
does that statement come from?
just the
They
mute
have
an observation.
etchings in walls inside pyramids where it looks as though they had
Ancient
crude.
people were no
light
dumber than
bulbs.
we were. They were pretty smart people.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing: when they go inside these tombs and they go in with flame for light, the flame goes out because there's not enough. There's
No
not enough
oxygen.
oxygen. So how did they see while they were in there? They had something.
I don't know. It's
Okay, Cliff, you have the answer?
No, he can get deeper
mirrors.
than me.
They use mirrors.
340-1590, 340-1590. So I'm going to talk about money.
Money's always a good subject.
Money's a good subject. When I get clients that call me up with a new conversation, I like to share it. One young fellow, again, I'm talking about with that Roth IRA, which got me into thinking more and more about the goal and how do you establish your goal, and then later how do you accomplish your goal. And he seemed to have a pretty good handle on it.
It's cool that he's 39 and has a goal.
Well, yeah, and that's very impressive. And you hit it.
Yeah.
And the fact that he has done that, it's impressive. And that he knew what he was talking about, because a lot of people, like I had a young lady come in to see me. She's 30 years old, gorgeous woman, very intelligent. She said, "What's stock?" I said, "Well, if you haven't been taught, stock is what you make soup from.
Yeah.
Stock
Okay,
is what you have.
It's a gun barrel.
I mean, there's all kinds of words for that for stock. So it was just an interesting thing.
Didn't they used to put people in the stock?
Put people in stocks,
Stocks.
but those are S's on
Those
the
are
end.
stocks of a different kind.
But we had a stockade, right?
Yeah.
Hey.
And that's not someone who helps you out with your stocks.
No,
No aid. No aid.
no, that wasn't cherry flavored, and it wasn't livestock. There's all kinds of stock words. Anyway, I was thinking about, and Dan and I have been talking about this now for over a year, maybe 2 years, that the market, by almost everybody's estimation, is what's called full. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not opportunities out there. But when we take the broad market, meaning the S&P 500, which is 500 blue chips, or the NASDAQ, which is over 3,000 companies, or the Dow, which is 30 companies, and we look at them and say, hey, is this a good place to put money, to invest money short term? My almost immediate answer is no. Short term worries me to death, because when we use price to earnings ratios to figure out the value of the overall stock market, the number that we are at or approaching, depending on who you're talking to, is around 20, whereas the ideal number is 10. So it's almost twice the actual value of what we would like to think is a good deal.
And we've had an extremely long bull run in the market.
Extremely long. Now, what I'm not saying, however, that the market won't continue to go, because what happens is the market normally works 6 months to a year in advance, and it's based on perception, where people are buying into the market saying, this is what I think is going to happen, and we all hope this is going to happen, that our new president is going to turn this economy into a more robust economy rather than this 1.5–2% growth. We're going to have this 3 to 4%.
It'd be wonderful.
Which, hey, guess what?
It's going to be a great thing for all his billionaire friends.
Well,
I'm being facetious.
But I hate to tell you, this. It's also going to be a great thing for people at the bottom of the spectrum.
If they have money in the market, money in mutual funds,
I'm
pension
not
plans.
very happy, though, with them trying to lump things together, which is a Washington way of doing things.
Well, but here comes
our tax cut is going to be tied to the infrastructure bill. Why?
That's why I bought stock in a company that makes bridges and roads
Yeah,
and steel. And not like a joke, but I had this friend of mine. He was complaining about all the cost of all the missiles that were sent over there. Okay, so I sent him back a nice little response. I go, thanks for the great stock tip.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
I know they're going to have to buy some more missiles.
Hey, right now, exactly. Those 59
munitions.
Yes.
There was those 59 missiles that took off. You're talking probably pushing almost $1 billion that was just kafumped.
How much did we give to Iran?
How much did we give them?
Yeah, Obama
cash.
sent them. How much?
The love offering.
We're not worried about that.
No, we're not worried about that, because that's usually.
But we're worried about 60 missiles.
Well, what I'm saying is whatever they use, they're going to replace.
Yeah.
Because from what I was listening to, I don't know all the inside, but they said these were like the new smart missiles. They all sort of like, the early ones sort of hovered, and then when they all sort of got together, they all came down like rain of fire at the same time.
Wow.
And they were able to control them and move
Well, they
them.
can GPS everything now.
There's
Well,
so
it's just
much
about
technology.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, technology.
My way of thinking was this. I would have said, hey, don't we have a bunch of old stuff we have to get rid
Let's
of?
use all that stuff
Let's
first.
get rid of that stuff
Get
first.
rid of the old stuff
But I
first.
think what
No,
he
we
did,
sell that to other nations.
well, here's what he did. if you think about it, he said, this is truly what we can do.
Yeah.
We are so precise. We can send
They
that
could probably
missile.
hit me and miss you.
Yes, we can send
Yeah,
that
yeah.
missile into that bunker and blow up that plane.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think you can hide from us. That was an impressive lesson he taught him.
So what we're saying there is there is always
We got cool toys.
There's always
in our
stock
front.
opportunities.
There's always stock opportunities, but you have to look at the individual opportunities that are out there. Potential, like Dan said, he bought stock in a company that builds bridges and does infrastructure repairs and assuming, hoping, planning that the government pulls off this infrastructure
So
plan.
keep your eyes open and see what people are really using.
But here's what also
your
happens.
Souls?
Use your brain.
But now we're talking about a single company.
versus a mutual fund.
When we look at, a mutual fund, which basically says we got 100 or 200 or 300 companies all underneath this umbrella, which you can come in and buy, it's pretty hard to cherry pick the ones you want out unless you start your own kind of fund by having 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 different stocks, and you're a sophisticated investor. This is not the easiest thing to do. So when I look at people and say, hey, long-term, 20 years, 15 years, 30 years, S&P 500 I'm pretty happy with. The NASDAQ 100 I'm very happy with. But when I'm talking about a year or two, I'm very worried.
Well, suppose I was 80 and said, Joseph, I can't outwait the time. Time's not on my side. I just want to make a little money every year and be safe. Is there like a place to put my money?
So now, it's funny we should say, Dan, you looked at. No, you don't quite look 80
I'm
yet.
getting
You're,
there.
You're
I'm
working
getting
on
there.
it. But here's what happens. Let's take a conservative, short-term concept. I was at a client of mine yesterday with their kids, her kids. She's 86 years old, and she needed income off of her $250,000 worth of savings. Now, $250,000 in the bank would get you $2,500 a year.
Yeah.
About 1%.
1%.
Well, that $200 a month really wasn't going to cut it.
No, not when everything cost $100.
She
could
needed
bill it
about
twice a month.
She needs about $2,000 a month. So I said, look, we have these debt instruments from some of the biggest companies, including utilities, some of the best household names, which is not common stock. These are called notes, debentures, preferreds. You don't own the company. You basically are loaning money to these companies, and they're going to pay you an interest rate. And the interest rate they're paying is somewhere between 5 and 7%. So let's take 6% on $200,000. That's $12,000.
$1,000 a month.
So all of a sudden, the income is starting to get palatable. Where
Now she can buy groceries.
And these things are 100% liquid. They can buy
What
them
is
today.
the risk, though, to her principal?
Well, there's always some risk. There's no such thing as no risk. But understand this. If I own stock in a company and the company goes bust, I'm an owner.
You go bust.
I go bust. But if I am a debtor for the company, I'm higher on the pecking order. Who gets paid first when a company
Lawyers.
goes
The
bust?
lawyers,
The
yeah.
lawyers. After the lawyers, debtors get paid. If there's any money left over after the debtors get paid, the owners get it, which there never is. So I look at debt instruments as the safest place that I can possibly find for people
That need a return.
that give
Let me
them
ask you this, though,
5,
Joe.
6%.
I would want to know then, okay, Joe, you want to put my money in a company that I'm loaning, technically
Right.
loaning this company
Right.
money. I want to know who they are. I want to make sure they're a very reputable company that's not going to go belly up in a year.
So what I use primarily are household names, like utility companies. You ever heard of utility companies?
I send them a check every month.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I'm not supposed to use, my
The name.
compliance people say, Joe, you're not supposed to use the actual name. You can hint, but don't use the actual name of the utility or whatever it might be. But I'm talking names that everybody would hear, including some banks. It's interesting. A bank can issue a debt instrument and pay 6%, but try to get a 6%
by
CD.
putting money in
you
the
can't
bank.
get it,
Yeah.
but they'll
Wow.
issue the debt instrument. So the ones that I'm using, all household names, and I feel very comfortable with them. Now, there are a couple of minor negatives. One, you got to pay me. Can you imagine that? It's hard being a philanthropist without money. So,
But I'm trying.
so the concept is you have to pay me a commission. Now, if you give me under $100,000, I charge 2.5% one time when you buy, and I charge nothing when you sell. And if you give me over $100,000, it goes to 2%. And if you give me over $500,000, it goes down again. So the concept is,
And it should.
well, it's the same amount of work no matter how much you give, pretty much. So the concept is the more you invest with Joe Martek, the less you're going to pay an actual commission percentage. Now, the next thing is, that's a negative, these things will probably be called. Called means they can say, take your money back. Take your money back. So let me just use one pure example right today. Utility. The call date is September of this year.
Okay.
And the call amount is $25 a share. Now, if you bought it at $24.50 a share, and you've been collecting the 5%, 6%
Yeah, it looks
interest,
like you lost a little money.
you get called at 25, you actually make a profit because you only paid $24.50.
Okay.
Now, if you paid $25.50 a share when you bought it, yes, you're collecting interest, but you may lose 50 cents a share when they call it. So you have to weigh how long is it going to be and how much interest am I going to collect? What is my yield all the way
net
through
yield.
this whole
Right.
period?
Do they disclose the call per share cost when you buy?
Yes.
Okay. So you would
Well,
know.
how do they
up front.
know? How do they know?
That's in their disclosure documents. That's what they
So
have
they just
to
picked
do.
a number.
No. Yes. But they just
It was
pick
a
a number.
sophisticated picking of the
Okay.
number.
Let me just tell you this. Almost all of these, I say almost, not 100%, are issued at $25, and when they call, they're called at $25. Now, why does the prices change? Well, big pension funds come in and buy $10 million worth today. Well, guess what? All those share prices that were $25 yesterday went up to 26 today because all of a sudden there's not many
There's
available.
demand.
Now, when it goes up, can I sell it?
No kidding.
Okay.
And here comes the magic of this stuff. And I can't guarantee this by any stretch, but I've been able to do it a few times in the last 3 years. We buy it, let's say, for $24.50, and it gets to 26. We sell it. Then we go buy something else for $24.50 or thereabout. We don't really care about making the 5 or 6% interest. If at the end of the year we can make 8 or 9 or 10% because we get lucky, and that's, I mean, quite honestly,
Absolutely.
it's exactly what it is.
That's because you just moved it around a little bit.
Well, there comes the key. So we have in my business what's called a limit, which is a sell limit. So today Dan comes in and he says, hey, we're going to buy that utility for $24.80. But Joe, if it gets to $25.50, I want you to sell it. So in the computer, I put in a sell limit at $25.50, and I don't have to stay awake. It will automatically
do it.
sell it when it hits that number. So we have been able to do that on a few circumstances. So I like these things a lot for the most conservative investor.
And you know, Joe, those quote unquote technicals
Yeah.
like that. A lot of your big houses they do that every day for
I know.
everything they own. They have a set buy and a set sell. And,
Every day,
and
all
those,
day.
Those are the technicals that they use. That
Yeah.
says historically this is like a high. So when we get close to that, we sell it.
Yeah.
And then we either reinvest it or we park it till we find the next opportunity. That's sophisticated
Well, if you listen to
investing.
sophisticated investors that are traders, these are guys that all day long trade and they buy and sell. They love volatility because what Dan was saying, they like the highs and the lows. That gives them an opportunity to buy and sell with this spread. Because if the market didn't change, it just stays flat, these guys are out of business because they can't make a profit. So I love the debt instruments from a standpoint of people that want to have income. They don't need to necessarily get sophisticated.
So
and
do
put
they
in-
pay this income like every week or every month or every quarter?
Every quarter. Now, on the other hand, like this client yesterday, she gets a check every month. It isn't exactly the same amount because what I've done is stagger these different ones so she always has some income every month because they quarters, they're not calendar quarters. They can be their fiscal quarter.
Right.
So they're different quarters.
How long would I have to own it?
Now, the interesting thing is some of these you can own it for 1 week. I've often said this is like being Catholic. Don't ask questions, you just are one. You can own it for 1 week, and 1 week later, you'll get 3 months' worth of interest.
and I'm going to ask another stupid question. I'm assuming you watch that.
No kidding.
And you know when those opportunities come up.
When I have my cheat sheet in my pocket, and that's what I call it, my cheat sheet, and it shows me the dates on every one of these things, when they pay and when I have to own it. So if I'm talking to you today and you say, Joe, I think I want to put in 50 or 100, pick a number. What do you think? Which one should we go with? I said, well, let's take a look. If we get into this one today, we can get paid June 1st. Mm-hmm. So that's a month and a half away. Well, here's another one. We can get paid the end of this month if we own it by the 20th of this month.
So you still have time?
So we've got time to do it. See, now what does happen, there are some caveats here. If you have an existing account with me already, and I don't care what your money's invested in, but you call me up today or we talk and you say, okay, I want to buy $50,000 worth of this right now. Okay, fine. 1 minute later, I buy it. But Joe, I haven't given you the money yet. Oh, I've got 3 days to get the money in. Now, don't ask questions. Back again. Mm-hmm. People say, how can they do that? And I said, I don't want to know.
But you have to set up the account, and you have to set it up where you answer all these questions for your compliance, so you know what that customer's risk tolerance is and stuff.
Everything has to be done and approved. Once that account's in and approved and open, you now have the ability to buy and sell without physically having the money in. Now, I need to FedEx that check in. Mm-hmm. But I've got
or somebody's in trouble.
Somebody's going to get me that money.
Oh, yeah, they're going to be unhappy. So let's say that Dan called me today and he said, Joe, buy $50,000 worth of XYZ, and I do it right now. Tomorrow I get the check from Dan, and I FedEx it into the company. They get it the next day. I have complied.
Now, with that opportunity to make that interest in that by April 20th, the one that is going to be called in September, could I call you and go move that September one now into the April one? And make the money? Or
yes, you got to sell that one.
Okay.
But let's just say the sell price today is $24.80, and you paid $24.90. Well, you're going to take a loss of 10 cents a share. Okay. So we have to look at it very closely.
If it would be, okay.
And the second part is this. Remember me getting paid?
Right.
See, I don't work for free. You can't be trading every day when you got to pay me, because if you
get paid on the buy, not the sell.
That's right.
I have a devil's advocate question. All right.
Repeat that question, that statement.
That's right.
I get paid when you buy, not when you sell.
So here's my question.
Yes.
I call you up. I have an account with you. I say, Joseph, buy me 100,000 shares of XYZ company.
Right.
I have 3 days to get you the money.
Right.
I call you up the next day because it went up by 2 points. I say, sell XYZ company.
Right.
What happens to the check I owe you?
It's an interesting
concept. Who owes who money at that point?
We're not supposed to talk about that.
I'm just asking.
Here's what happens. They consider it a wash sale.
Okay.
And I actually have had this happen, where people change their mind, or they wanted something else for the money, or they said, hey, Joe, I watched it. It's gone up. I want to sell it. Okay, fine. Do I have to send in the money? I said, yes. Let's send it in. But now it's sitting in cash in the account. And you really never really spent the money.
I just made a little gain.
You made a little gain. Now, understand, this is not a normal circumstance, but it does happen. And they do call them a wash.
Okay. I was just curious because I have some friends who are what I call day traders.
Yeah.
And they buy and sell stuff all day.
All day long.
On a tiny margin.
And then what happens is, at the end of the day, they figure out how much money they had to give it or get back, whether it's anything. Now, once you have a margin account, though, you have been loaned money by the broker-dealer, whoever you've got it with. You don't have to use your own money. You have borrowed the money.
You've just leveraged your money.
But once you've had a day where you've made money,
well,
you're going to do the same thing tomorrow.
Yeah, but what if you lose money tomorrow?
Here's what happens.
You might get cold feet.
Have we ever heard of Biloxi, Mississippi?
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there.
They have casinos.
Right.
That's called gambling. Well, there's a lot of people that gamble in the market, and quite honestly, I have known some that were extremely good at it. Extremely good at it. They were not brokers. When you trade for your own account and you know what you're doing, and you spend 6 or 8 hours a day working your own account, you're going to be better if you know what you're doing almost than any broker, because you're watching your own money like a hawk.
But you're gonna pay a price for that knowledge up front, Joseph.
Oh,
in my opinion,
you don't
That's
learn.
what I think. I don't want to do that.
No.
I want someone that I can say, hey, I need you to sort of watch out for my little
That's
egg
it.
nest here, and you take care of it. I don't want to do that.
Well, the average
Well, usually
person,
people are busy working.
working
They're-
or playing.
They can't
Hey,
spend the 6 hours.
well, the guys that I
managing their own
know,
money.
this is their hobby. I mean, literally,
Okay.
they're retired.
Okay,
So
they've
making
earned their
money's
money.
their hobby.
Making money's their hobby.
That's a good hobby to have.
And that's not a bad one, yeah. And their peer group, other people that are doing the same thing, it's just like when you get together with a group of doctors. You might as well talk about cutting people open and
Of
taking
course.
stuff out because that's what they know. That's their
Latest
main
procedure.
topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. So anyway, the debt instruments are rank up pretty high when I talk about people that want to get income but are just really not too hard about risk. On the other hand, here comes one of the major subjects, and I heard it on CNBC today, which is one of my favorite subjects, which is called real estate. Normally what happens in real estate, and we've watched this over the years, when the market is doing well, the economy is doing well, the price of real estate constantly goes up a little bit. Now, if it goes up too fast, too far,
You call it
we have a
Florida.
problem
Call it a
because
bubble.
You
there's
call
a
it-
called a bubble.
yeah.
But when it kind of just comes sneaking along and doing well, real estate is pretty good. And then people were asking me yesterday about the price of real estate. Are you getting scared? And I said, look, when the price of old real estate gets higher than the price of new real estate, we got a problem. But if you can buy used housing for less than you can buy new housing, that's the rule. That's what it's
That's
supposed
the way
to
it's
be.
supposed to be,
And it's
yeah.
still there.
And it's still location,
But
location, location.
here in Florida, for the longest time, it was always a better choice to purchase brand new.
Well,
We finally caught up with the rest of the country.
the key thing is this. When I look at REITs, R-E-I-T, Real Estate Investment Trust, they have to pay out 90% of their profits every 3 months as a normal rule. And a lot of these are commercial real estate, and a lot of them have floating interest rates that are not fixed rates. We have a lot of REITs right now that are paying between 10 and 15% interest dividend.
That's wonderful.
They're
this
doing
time.
extremely well. And I tell my clients, I said, look, here's the thing that happens with that. As long as the economy is dinking along doing well, real estate should dink along and do well. But if all of a sudden there's a curve down, hey,
You'll feel it.
it's time to get out of real estate. And I don't see that happening in the foreseeable future. I expect the economy to keep dinking along in a positive aspect when we have unemployment rate below 5%. Wages are going up for the bottom end of it, not fast enough, but they're going.
And if
Anyway.
people have questions, they can call us.
340-1590, 340-1590. We've been told to leave. Is that true?
Get out.
See you next week.
See you next week. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.